The setting was this. Jesus and his disciples were approaching Jerusalem less than a week before the crucifixion.
As they walked along, Jesus began to tell his disciples about what would happen to him. And the Son of Man will be delivered to the chief priests and the scribes, and they will condemn him to death, and deliver him to the Gentiles.
And they will mock him, and spit upon him, and kill him. And after 3 days he will rise.
At this point, the disciples James and John asked Jesus if they might sit, one at his right hand and one at his left, in his glorious kingdom.
Jesus replied, "You do not know what you are asking. Are you able to drink the cup that I am to drink?"
James and John answered confidently, "We are able."
To this, Jesus replied that they would indeed experience the same suffering and death as he, but that he was not able to guarantee their peace in this kingdom.
Sensing the misunderstanding, Jesus reminded his disciples that they must not confuse the standards of this world with the standards of his kingdom. Whoever would be great among you must be your servant, and whoever would be first among you must be slave for all.
For the Son of Man also came, not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many.
According to our mission statement, we're here to educate the whole student in preparation for a life of service. When has Taft taught you this? Has it been effective?
I don't think they directly taught me this.
I don't know if it's necessarily been a direct, effort of the school.
Of course, we hear lectures all the time about non-civi and ways that we can be better within the community.
The service part of the motto definitely gets ignored a little bit.
We spend one day a year, we have community service day, and then for seniors there's an extra day of community service, but there's nothing really year-round that keeps us in the mindset of the community around us in our society.
We do community service day, and I did volunteering once, but I don't feel like it's emphasized as much as they maybe show.
It's no secret that sometimes we can feel like hypocrites, living here and studying here in all the luxuries of this campus, preaching not to be served, but to serve. In our reading about the history of American boarding schools, we found it to be essentially a history of the upper class. In that history lived the idea that the elite is doing a divine service to the lower classes simply by maintaining power. And that is not at all what we intend today. Times have changed and we've changed with them. But an acknowledgement of our history is important so that we can take deliberate steps to move our reality closer to where our intentions lie. Zach and I wanted to explore outside of New England, where our boarding school's ideas are always blending, to find a completely different take on the same stated mission of teaching smart kids about service. We went to the West Coast. What's interesting about the Midland School in Los Olivos, Southern California, is that it is the sibling school of Kent. In 1932, a graduate of Kent founded Midland with the same mission as his East Coast alma mater. Taft and Midland are trying to do the same thing, and that's what makes this comparison so interesting.
Half the stuff in our mission statement or more is in every other independent school's mission statement. They all read the same. Then now how you get to that, right? And whether the buildings are made out of brick and have ivy crawling up them, right? Or they're, old redwood or where else is kind of a semantic.
Midland is like Taft in many ways, and very different in many others. Its teachers are graduates of top universities. Many of Midland's come from Stanford. Its matriculation is just as impressive as ours. But Taft and Midland look a lot different from each other. Its students do pretty much everything around campus. They do it for each other's sake, and all of them do it. Their two wonderful head prefects, David and Adrian, explained to us. Every student is assigned work, which they'll do daily as part of the school's jobs program. Now some are waiters who will set up and clean the dining hall, others clean a particular classroom. Others have been trained to take care of their animals. In addition, operating on rotating schedules, students are responsible for bringing in the wood and lighting a fire to heat the water with which all their peers will shower.
There is a sort of simple pragmatism that's always been a part of the school from its founding, from its earliest days, where we kind of just do things ourselves. And then one of the great differentiators is that we actually do things ourselves, meaning there isn't a professional cleaning staff who comes by and cleans up once a week. And so in the same way that when students have a shower fire, that if you fail at that task, you suffer the wrath of your peers because they all have to take a lukewarm shower or a cold shower, right? And we live with the consequences of our communal actions, right? And that creates a sort of authenticity to the experience. I mean, what school doesn't have a raised bed out behind the science building? Look, we grew organic carrots, right? And good on them, it's great, right? But our version of that is to see if we can grow half our own food value right here, right? And farm to table isn't something we talk about, it's something we try and do, right? And that those are the things where we're at our best.
There is no professional cleaning staff. Rather, every Sunday morning the entire student body gathers in assembly. David and Adrian have assigned them spaces and tasks for the morning's work, and 2 hours will be spent by the entire community, cleaning, repairing, and maintaining the campus.
Anna?
Maisie and Jade, you're on the art room with me. Wolfie?
On upper yard, Ray, Luke, Ziggy, and Adam X meet at supply closet.
Sarah, shop organizer.
It seems like an enormous burden, but really most people are smiling, playing loud music, and in general, enjoying themselves.
Have a fantastic work period and a great Sunday.
How do you define success at Midland? I don't know how familiar you are with East Coast culture, but it's very clearly there's ways that people are successful, and individual achievement is the pinnacle of what we're doing and why we're doing it.
Totally.
Yeah. But here,
I think it is the same at a lot of West Coast boarding schools. Midland is kind of a bubble, but I think that there's some people here that don't have anywhere near a 4.0, and they'll probably not get great SATs. And I think that they are some of the most successful Midland members because they are a very integral part of our community. It would be really hard for me if they left. That's kind of, I guess, how I define it. It would be hard for the community if they were taken out. It would be hard.
Yeah, purpose runs through a lot of different channels here. I think my gauge of success is my personal, am I doing what I need to be doing here? Am I taking the steps I need to make the relationships I want? Am I maximizing my Midland experience? Is how much do I miss it when I leave on breaks? How much do I want to be back at the place where there's no hot water? How much do I want to be back at the place where there's not that much privacy? How much do I want to be back at the place where I don't have my phone on me all the time? How much do I want to be back at the place where I can't drive? There's purpose that is instilled in us from the moment we get here, to where something as mundane as sweeping the floor, or you guys saw during work period today, there are people that sweep water and dirt. That happens here.
And you feel good about it.
You feel good about it, and you feel like you're doing something that's actually really important. Something that's really interesting about purpose here is it really does take time to build. I mean, as a freshman, when you're doing something, you're cleaning a window, it's really mundane, you don't really want to do it. And then as you kind of go through your time, you go through like these steps of, okay, I see why I see like the logistic reason why we're doing this. I want to see out of the window. And then you kind of graduate to, okay, this makes sense. Like, it looks kind of nice to the outside world when things are clean. And then you get to like this like point where Johnny Ninos is probably sitting there squealing with delight, where it's like, I get it. Cleaning this window is a deep reflection of myself and everyone around me and all that I love, and like that's and
it'll make me feel so good inside if I can like make this room way cleaner than Johnny thinks it's gonna be. I'm gonna feel really good about myself for the rest of the week.
Mm-hmm. And it's obviously like I don't feel that way every time I sweep a floor.
But I totally have felt that way. Cleaning windows, honestly, that has like made my day many times.
David and Adrian's description of a Midland student's work ethic had so much truth, and we were so impressed by that. But what we were most struck by was how happy everyone seemed. The importance of personal satisfaction is actually built into the rhetoric of the school.
Life is full of menial tasks, and if you see drudgery in all menial tasks, then you have a life of drudgery ahead of you.
And it's a value that they live by.
Dream of, and I wish you joy and happiness. But above all this, I wish you love.
This is Nate. He's from Anchorage, Alaska. He's a great kid, but he used to get into trouble there on occasion, and sometimes he still does at Midland.
That's been the message since I've got here. No, please behave.
It's his first year, so he's still learning to buy into Midland's philosophy. He's fully aware how absurd the Midland lifestyle might seem to the outside eye.
You learn not necessarily by being in the classroom, but by doing. You know, by like chopping wood and working on the farm. You learn a lot more about things that you'll have to do later in life rather than like calculus.
Like what types of things?
Like being a farmer.
Yeah, I guess.
Like harvesting produce.
What happens when you break a rule?
You get laps.
Tell us about laps.
Laps. Each lap is 15 minutes of manual labor. And you get exorbitant amount of laps for menial things that shouldn't be punishable or at all incriminating, but they are.
Examples?
Oh, perfect. Swearing in middle yard, so the area where everyone is, most likely place you would swear, is 5 laps. That is an hour and 15 minutes of manual labor.
Have you stopped swearing?
No.
But he's definitely getting used to this way of life.
What jobs have you done well? And which jobs have you not done well? And how did you enjoy or not enjoy that experience?
I've only been a waiter, and I've done a pretty good job at that. Most of the table heads say I'm like pimping, so that's good. I have not done a good job following all the rules. That's been a bit of a misstep for me. But, you know, always on the up and up, so following all the rules now, doing great.
And so, while at first it had seemed like we had met the counterexample that disproved Midland's philosophy, one which requires every kid to buy in every day, Zach asked our last question, and Nate said this.
How has Midland taught you to think about other people? Like specific examples. Like when was the time you were doing something and you were like, I'm doing this because of other people?
Shower fires, because like, I don't mind. I mean, taking a cold shower sucks, but like, I don't mind. But chopping wood and like making the fire for other people is so that they can like, maybe their day sucked or maybe they had a long like day and they had lots of laps or something because everything is a crime. So maybe they had like a rough day and it'd be nice for them to have a nice warm shower at the end of the day before dinner.
That was it. That was the profound stuff. You nailed it.
How does an institution operate such that each individual that exists within sees the world as larger than his or herself? How does it instill in those individuals that they can affect change in that world simply by keeping others in mind? More than that, they must.
Dude, what are you doing?
Midland has a work ethic hierarchy, essentially the set of expectations that govern the jobs program. The first step is showing up, acknowledging that you have a job.
You know, most of our students do well over 500 hours of service to the community before they graduate. A lot of kids have about an hour a day worth of work. And I do think our students and families do see what that translates into.
I remember, this is a random thing, but as a junior it started raining and I realized there was no one in lower yard and that the whole wood pile was uncovered and it would get soaking wet and we wouldn't have hot shower fires for the next week if we didn't have wood. And so like 3 of us ran down in our like sandals and shorts in the rain to like try and cover it with tarps. And so there's a lot of just like moment by moment reasons to do your job.
We have a couple of people who just, if they notice that like the library or in here doesn't have a fire and it's really cold out in the morning, they'll take the time out of their morning even if they don't have a job and set the example and build the fire.
It was like the 5th or 6th time I had seen this happen, which was be in assembly right out here, and somebody would either be sick or gone or a conflict or whatever else, and we need a work job filled. Somebody would raise their hand and say, oh, somebody's sick, or we need 2 volunteers for dish house, right? And, you know, so we've got the entire school sitting there, and a couple people raise their hand, right? Tick, tick, okay, off you go. And it happened over and over again. And now, think it through. It's like we have adolescents who are volunteering to give up their free time in the middle of a busy day, right? To go wash dishes, right? For no discernible benefit. Nobody's gonna pay you, you're not gonna get nobody's gonna get a gold star, right? So what is that? What inspires that?
Where I learned that I should raise my hand when someone needs someone to cover a job is because as a freshman, I watched as my freshman prefects with all the stuff on their plate would raise their hands and they do the job that was asked of them, and they did it willingly and they did it happily. Midland instills a lot of the work ethic and the social ethic and like the code of conduct almost that you would really want to see in your friends and you hope that your friends see in you.
It's like a morals boot camp a little bit.
Kind of, yeah.
A few years ago, a Midland student named Sean Cummins wrote a short piece called Dust for the school newspaper, and Nick's going to read it for you.
The dust is everywhere. It settles on the mantle and on top of my desk. It gathers on the television screen and collects on the shoulders of my suit jackets and collared shirts. It burrows into the fabric of our couch, and when I smack my hand down, wham! On the cushions, it billows up in a great gray cloud before dispersing to find some other place to rest. I know from experience that eating every day in a dusty dining hall shared by 100 other people, many of them teenage boys with less than perfect hygiene, leaves a person with an excellent immune system and strong conversational skills. I've realized that squashing a spider means fewer of those perfectly geometric spider webs sparkling with dew in the morning. Every Sunday morning, the students and faculty work together to clean the campus. I smile to watch whichever poor student has been assigned to clean the 3-walled geology classroom, sweeping dirt out the open space where the 4th wall should be, only for the wind to blow it right back in. Next Sunday we'll clean it again. But the dust always returns. The spiders weave new webs. The weeds and vines grow back. And herein lies one of the most valuable lessons this place has taught me. The natural world here is just permissive enough to let us know that, yes, with a little work and cooperation, we can live here perfectly comfortably. At the same time, it is persistent enough, even inside our own dwellings, to remind us at all times that we do not own this place. We are allowed to coexist, not to dominate. The spiders in my bed are a harmless reminder of this, there to keep the runaway human ego in check. I share my world with the spiders, with the vines and weeds, with the dogs and cats the students bring here, who wander about the campus, and with the other people. And with the dust, never to be conquered.
You know, there's a jeopardy in translation. It's easy to go out in the world and say, wow, that's really cool, all this stuff they do, let's do that. And at the same time, you have to reflect deeply on like, well, why don't we do that? And are those good or bad reasons? That idea of like, what can we learn from other schools? Some of it is like, okay, these things are possible. It doesn't mean that they're a good idea for us, right? But it may mean there's something in here that's of substance that may challenge, you know, our community to think differently, right? So for example, our focus with regards to service starts inward. Right? Our students do service here. Right? And we have a student activism club, and we do, but we do not, and so students are doing things that are facing outward, right? But we do not have kids off campus once or twice a week for an hour or two doing service in our local community, right? We do it periodically, or we do one big project and then nothing for a couple weeks. And so lots of schools have fantastic service programs that are outward facing. And so there's an example of where a school has chosen to value service and all that service has to teach, but they do it quite differently.
Midland showed us our proposal for Taft should be to get everyone involved on a regular basis, but we know a jobs program can't be implemented here. Without a jobs program culturally, we can assume more responsibility for our spaces out of consideration for their shared users. Institutionally, we can make time for that sort of thinking. Why isn't service learning part of our curriculum? We wanted to recommend a class at Taft, but we had no idea what it would look like. The urban school in San Francisco became our example.
So if you look, there's A, B, C, and D. So those are the 4 main classes. Service learning is one of those 4. So it's the same as a math class, a science.
Freshman year, it's a 4-year program. So freshman year you start with a class, 12, because we're trimesters, so you have 4 classes, a trimester, 12 weeks long.
So the curriculum every year it's scaffolded. So for example, our freshmen, they actually don't do any service. And it's called an Identity and Ethnic Studies class.
So we start freshman year with a class called Identity and Ethnic Studies. So you do that for 6 weeks, and then for the other 6 weeks you do a health class. So your freshman year is 6 weeks of intensive, just education. It's learning about what's the difference between race, ethnicity, nationality. We do this iceberg project where you're, what is identity, what goes beneath the iceberg, what's seen to the outside. So it's a lot about identity and self-reflection, but also just I know I was super, when I came to urban, when race is a social construction, I was I don't know what that means. After that point, you're pretty much expected to understand what that, what all these terms mean, and how it works with people's identity. So that's freshman year.
We talk a little bit about immigration, but really it's more around their own families' immigration stories. So we do some projects around that. We look a little bit at gender. They're just practicing kind of understanding that there are pronouns, and really it's a really self-reflective space. So we want them to understand who they are before we ask them to go out and try to engage in the dynamics of I'm going to a private school and I'm volunteering at a public school. What does that mean? So that's the freshman class.
And then sophomore year is when you get into the actual volunteering and going out into your community. In sophomore year they do a little bit more hand-holding, because they give you the organizations to volunteer with, and then you can choose.
But now they volunteer during their double periods, but we organize the volunteers. So we have 5 different partnerships, and the students can choose one of those 5. We drive them there, we bring them back. And then we have still class time on the single periods, and the sophomore class specifically looks at socioeconomic status.
Okay.
Wow. So how do we define class? What does it mean to be middle class? What does it mean to be upper class? We actually look at markers, what is the poverty line? Right? What are the values that are associated with these? With juniors and seniors, they pick their own project. As long as it's a nonprofit or a government organization, they can go anywhere. I just taught my 8-period class. So if you look, we have these single periods, and then we have these double periods. Yeah. I only teach with the juniors and seniors on the single period, so 8 period and 8 period, and then they have this time completely free to volunteer should they choose to use that.
So service learning is still class, so you would spend your double periods going out to your service site, and then the other single periods would be in the classroom. So I know that was really helpful for me, because I would go out and I would talk to these really cool people, but also hear these really hard stories, but then I had a place when I came back to urban to share about them and talk about what I heard and what I saw, and have a supportive group of people who are all kind of doing
the same thing, whether even those different organizations. I mean, the class is what really makes a lot of it. So we watch TED Talks, we have discussions, and we read books about social justice. And so I think without having that class and just having a requirement, you lose so much, because all of a sudden it's going from being like a whole experience of where you're learning, but then you're also going out, to just going out 2 hours of work a week, going home, and that's it. But the class kind of allows you to talk about them and deconstruct them, and what does it mean? Why are talk about why are there so many people coming to needing showers in San Francisco? Why is that a problem? Which you wouldn't really think about, if you weren't forced to talk about it.
The other thing I was going to say, and this is something that I've done in other spaces as well, is exploring the classes where projects could take place, right? So in a literature class, as you're reading a novel about somebody coming of age, how can you talk about identity in that? Or in an econ class, how can you talk about socioeconomic status? And then maybe you go out and do, serve a meal or connect with a local organization that's doing work on poverty, right? That there are classes, I think, that's another space where if you can't get the time completely carved out, could you get faculty willing to do projects through their classes? Because that's a really popular model in colleges.
From what we heard from Taft, it seems that the community is ready for more spaces, potentially a class dedicated to the cause of conversation about identity and eventually about service.
Having more constant discussions about community service and encouraging more students to participate in it, not just on Community Service Day, would be a great way to start there, because for a lot of people it is the 1 day a year thing when you go out and you serve your community, and then you're just right back into academics and it's not a part of your life at all.
Inherent in the classroom dynamic is a teacher leading and students following or participating, but not necessarily driving a conversation, and thus it's in areas where that dynamic doesn't exist, like a student-run club or a musical production where you have to take the time out of your day to contribute your utmost to something that is greater than yourself, where oftentimes academics are about the grade that you individually receive, is where most Tafties learn their leadership experience. And because of this, I think that we need to encourage students to participate in extracurricular activities as much as possible, including but not limited to changing the requirements of how many service extracurriculars one has to take a year, or if one has to participate in at least a club, or if Taft can have a program similar to TED Talks where students can speak to other students regarding issues about which they're passionate, or even just have more student morning meetings with a TED Talk style form.
Maybe if you're doing a varsity sport, maybe there's a certain week where that sport goes to a certain community school, and I know the basketball team one year we went to a local middle school, and we played basketball with the kids. A soccer team maybe can go do the same thing with their respective for their respective sport. I think that just pushing that more within other activities throughout the school day and throughout the whole school year would be an easy way for TAP to implement more community outreach, more volunteering, and service leadership throughout the kids, while they're also doing things they love to do. So
if we create more spaces and more instances to allow those conversations to flow healthily, I don't want to say force, but for a lack of a better word, just forcing these conversations about diversity and inclusivity, forcing the students to have these conversations. I don't want to say force because you don't necessarily want to force people, but I do think that if we don't have these conversations, no change will happen. So forcing conversations to talk about things that happened in the news, because I don't think that we talk about the news often enough. Maybe taking a little bit of time out of the classroom, or in the classroom actually, maybe taking just a little bit of a detour from the schedule that you have in the day. I understand that there is a schedule need to be had, but there are also current events that affect us as a future generation that if we don't talk about, there will be no change towards the future. I think that having those conversations in the classroom especially will better the individual and open their minds to different experiences and different perspectives that they probably haven't thought of beforehand. I think that's the main thing that could possibly help.
Moms and pops, they used to take us to church, saying if you don't believe, then the praying don't work. With the beatbox I got free, on the pavement I'm first. Music brought me to my knees, I found faith in a verse. So dear spirit, I know I gotta take a chance, and my mistakes and shortcomings finally made a man. I got some issues, I got problems, gotta make amends. I watch my daughter gigging in the kitchen to the safety dance. This shit right here, we call love. You can't put that into words, but feel that in your gut. With goosebumps on my arms, I watch the falling sun. Kiss my daughter and say thank God as I wake up. Oh, I know, yeah, I know now. And I'm up, but I'm aware that it goes down. Travel around the globe, I needed to slow down. That's right. And no better feeling right around in my home.
I'm feeling this good when it's Monday morning. Been doing my own thing, can't say that I'm sorry. And I can only pray someday that we'll all be more than just okay. We can be so free, and I can get fly with you, ride with you, shine with you, yeah. I can get fly with you, ride with you, shine with you, yeah.
Oh my God, no other person on this earth could ever take my job. This my life, it was planned, I can't take it off. Bruise elbows, knees scrape, I learned to take a fall. My mistake, karma waits, but I'll be brave, the pain seems more than I could take, I learn more from loss than the game, New state of mind, I feel like taking my time, and I lay back, recline, still pushing that 85, like windows down, city passing by like a time lapse, the weatherman be tripping, so the ceiling got that white rag, ayy, we came so far. Just some kids in the city trying to make some art. Leave some change in the fountain, hope to make my mark. You see, I was given the role, never played my part.
I'm feeling this good when it's Monday morning. Been doing my own thing, can't say that I'm sorry. And I can only pray someday that we'll all be more than just okay. We can be so free, and I can get fly with you, ride with you, shine with you, yeah. I can get fly with you, ride with you, shine with you, yeah.
I can have a life today. I have life today. I rely on that constant communication with my higher power more so than anybody these days. And I realize that that's kind of all I need. And then, of course, y'all appear, right? Y'all appear, and things appear, and situations appear. And I realize that's God working through me if I allow myself to be that vessel